Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today for our very first presentation of the day for CREST Access to Cybersecurity Day. And it is running over 2 days, so please feel free to join any of the other presentations and workshops that we have running today. But we've got a very exciting presentation to start our day off, and I'd like to say a big thank you to Itimi for joining us today. She will be exploring the gender and race gap in cybersecurity. So there's just a few more people coming in. So just before I hand over to Stephanie, I will just say that if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask at the end, then please feel free to pop those into the question and answer pane and we can get those asked for you. So thank you very much, and thank you very much, Stephanie, for coming on today and doing this presentation, and I will hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Debbie, and a huge thanks to CREST for inviting me for today's session. So hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Itimi, and today I'm going to be talking about the gender and race gap in cybersecurity. So just a quick overview of how today is going to run. I'm going to basically talk about diversity in cybersecurity. I want to talk about the UK specific gender and ethnicity stats within cybersecurity, and also estimates of other diversity factors that we tend to not think about when we think about cybersecurity. And as some of us may know, there is a huge difference between diversity and inclusion. So we're going to be talking about inclusion within cybersecurity, discrimination, so a potential cause for talent loss, but also for firms and how you can manage diversity and inclusion within your own organization, and how you can find and nurture diverse talents, ways to create advancement and opportunities for your staff, and how to write an effective diversity and inclusion policy. So a bit overview of who I am today. So I kind of wear 2 hats. So my first hat is I'm a digital entrepreneur. So I run a social enterprise that aims to try and get Black and minority ethnic women into cybersecurity. And currently we have over 1,000 members worldwide. I also like to dabble into art. So I have a postcard company that deals with West African art. And I'm also a PhD research student within information security based at Royal Holloway. And my career is a little bit interesting. So I've worked in BBC Africa, I've worked for the UK Home Office, European Commission, and also UN Women. And then you can kind of see a bit about my background from these pictures at the side. So I think when we think about diversity inclusion, what is diversity? So for me, diversity encompasses acceptance and respect. So this means that we all have to understand that each individual is unique, and we have to understand each other's individual differences. And this could be based on different dimensions. So it could be race, it could be ethnicity, it could be sexual orientation, your socioeconomic status, your physical ability, your religious beliefs, politics, or any other ideologies. It is also ensuring that we create safe and positive environments that nurtures its differences, and that we're able to understand each other, that goes beyond simple tolerance and goes into acceptance, as well as celebrating the rich dimensions of diversity that exist within each and every single one of us. So why is this important? I mean, you hear the word diversity and inclusion, it's kind of like a buzzword, but it's important because loads of research, so for example, the Chartered Institute of Personal and Development, so CIPID, as well as Credit Suisse and Gartner, have found that companies with high level of diversity and inclusion have better financial performance, they have higher employee satisfaction, and are able to increase their talent retention. So this is a bit obvious. We know that we live in a more globalized society, and it's important that we have a diverse workforce to mirror this society so that we're able to understand how best to kind of help everyone. So the UK, as we know, faces a huge cybersecurity skills gap. And this was actually documented by the DCMS, which is the Department of Digital Cultures, Media and Sport. And they found that 653,300 businesses had a fundamental gaps in cyber skills. And also there's another stat that for the industry to grow, we need about 17,500 new members or new entries of people within this field for it to grow, especially within the UK. Now, you might be thinking, what is the numbers? What is the gender and ethnicity numbers? Why is this important? Why do we talk about diversity? So according to KPMG 2020 diversity report, the industry has 31%. However, the DCMS shows 15% and Tech Nation shows 19% of the industry is occupied by women. Again, we have a long way to go till we reach that 50-50 split that our global economy actually shows. And according to the DCMS report, ethnic minorities make up 17% of the industry. And this number is much smaller when we're looking at minority ethnic women. Now, when we're looking at the estimates of other diversities within the cybersecurity sector, this screenshot that I'm showing you here is actually taken from DCMS. And as you can see, the industry has 16% female, but only 3% of the industry, especially those who have senior positions within the industry, are women. It's only 3%. When we look at ethnic minority, again, 3%. When we look at people who may be disabled, we have about 1%. And when we look at people who are neurodivergent, we have about 2%. So it shows incredibly the differences between, first of all, the numbers of people within the sector, but those who are in senior positions. So we still have a long way to go within this industry in regards to how we can diversify it. So when we're talking about inclusion within diversity, or not diversity, within cybersecurity, is very different. So if diversity is all about numbers, inclusion is in terms of feelings. How do people feel within your organization? So, you know, the cybersecurity sector will not profit from more diversity if it's not inclusive. So it's ensuring that those who are entering the door feel included, feel like their voice matter within the organization that you're in. And inclusivity allows you to have a higher level of performance. It actually enables you to increase the retention of your staff. And it allows professionals to actually act their best within the industry as well. And when you're talking about inclusion, again, it's not just talking about gender. There are other intersectional elements that we need to think about, whether it's class, whether it's sexual orientation, neurodiversity, ethnicity, religion, or disability. We have to think about all these other things and how to ensure that we're creating safe environments where everybody's voice is respected and everyone feels included within the organization. So when we think about the damaging numbers of discrimination, it actually can create a potential cause for talent loss. So this screenshot was actually taken from the Scripting Diversity, which is a 2020 report done by the National Cybersecurity Center and KPMG. And as you can see, the proportion of demographics who have experienced negative incidents within cybersecurity, you know, for people who are non-binary, 31%. People who prefer not to self-describe, 33%. People who identify as trans, 29%. And when we look at ethnicity, you know, the highest numbers are from people from Black, African, Caribbean, and Black British backgrounds, as well as people from Asian British backgrounds as well, which have high significant numbers. So again, this shows that, you know, these are the potential areas that we need to think about when we are, you know, creating policies. You know, how are we dealing with discrimination? How is that being taken? How is it being done? You know, sometimes some industries or some companies might have different committees that actually deal with this, like independent. So thinking about ways of actually, how do you deal with discrimination within your organization, and how do you ensure that everyone feels included, is definitely something that everyone should think about. And now we'll come to managing. So I've kind of talked about the problem, but it's how do we move away from the problem and think about solutions? So organizations need to think about inclusive culture, inclusive employment policies, procedures, as well as inclusive personal behavior. The first thing you need to think about is, how does your organization create a company strategy? So this is your overall strategy. You need to think about diversity inclusion from the get-go. So thinking about from your interview process, your recruitment to onboarding processes, how are you thinking about or embedding diversity and inclusion within your strategy? Second is workplace behavior. You need to identify what is acceptable workplace behavior and what isn't acceptable workplace behavior. This is extremely important to ensure that everyone knows what is acceptable and what it's not. Third thing to do is communication. So how do you communicate your company's values? Not only from senior staff, but right down to the bottom. How is it embedded in your communication style, in how you speak to people, how you create spaces where employees can have engagement with senior staff, but also with the organization as a whole? And then the fourth one is learning and development. So, how are you embedding diversity and inclusion education into your company strategy? And finally, it's all about measuring, review, and reinforce. So think about measuring your diversity, which is, we talked about numbers, but also review, your inclusion policies. How do people feel in your organization? Sometimes it's great to have, surveys that are anonymous, so employees feel comfortable to kind of share their experiences. And then again, it reinforces this notion of this is a diverse as well as an inclusive space. So it's thinking about how you measure, review, and reinforce your values as well. Now, how do you find and nurture diverse talent? And I think, especially with the gap that, you hear so many times, there's a huge cybersecurity gap. But as you thinking about, how are you actually finding diverse talent? So the first thing I'll say is you have to reassess your criteria on job adverts. So, if you are focusing on specific universities or grades, you might exclude actual talented candidates who may not fit that mold. Also, requiring industry experience can also narrow your potential talent pool. I think as well, if we talk about diversity, not diversity, but skills gap within the sector, and we don't actually give people chances or give people the opportunity or nurture talent, then we're going to keep having a snowball of this never-ending cycle of not having enough skills. So I always encourage companies to think about actually investing in talent and taking on people who may not have industry experience, but may have transferable skills that might be beneficial to the role. Second thing as well is, how do you engage in specialist recruitment firms? So think about the recruitment firms that you engage with. Do they have diversity inclusion embedded in how they look for candidates? Also engage with community groups. Similar to like Seidea, there are other groups as well, like Coding Black Females, Zontos, and other organizations that you can kind of plug into that have diverse talent. And then it's also thinking about, how do you change your interview practices and processes? So for example, it might be good to have more than one person interviewing, diversifying, so ensuring that you have a diverse interviewing panels. Also, anonymizing candidates' names can help avoid biases that might be linked with people's names as well. So I was thinking about, how do you change your interview processes to actually encourage more people to go through the process? And finally, is to hold your suppliers and hiring managers into account. So if you use external recruiters, hold them accountable for, diversity of the candidates they're bringing in front of you. And likewise, hiring managers must ensure that they have team diversity as well. So this is, I'll say, are like a great way for you to find, but also nurture your diverse talent. And now is when we think about, diversity, now the people are, they've gone through the door. How do you then have retention? How do you retain talent? How do you create advancement and opportunities? Like I said earlier, there is a huge divide for both women and ethnic minorities, moving, not only them entering the door, but actually advancing into senior position. There is a huge gap between there as well. So the first one is to examine your progression pipeline. So take time to examine your organization progression pipeline. So when people come through the door, are they advancement opportunities? What is the culture like in regards to promotions and things like that? Second thing as well is to explore your working practices. I know for women, Some women prefer more flexible working practices because of family commitments and things of that nature. So exploring ways to create more flexibility is also another way of creating more advancement and opportunities by creating more inclusive and flexible culture. Third thing I would always recommend is mentoring programs. And that's pairing a new employee with a mentor who maybe is of a senior position. This is great because it actually empowers that employee, allows them to know, how to navigate the workplace, but also gives them the boost and confidence that they need to actually go for senior positions as well. Another great thing that you might consider is reverse mentoring, where you're having newbies also mentor senior staff as well, because there's definitely benefits that can happen both ways. And finally, training and development opportunities. So how are you, investing in your staff? I know now, for example, cloud security is important. Have you thought about maybe investing in your staff, taking them on a cloud security program? So things like that. When you're actually investing in your staff and creating training and development opportunities, you are expanding their mindset, but also expanding their capability as well, and enabling them to actually rise up the rank also. Now, I'll go to the final point of today, which is how to write an effective diversity inclusion policy. So I'll say the first thing is to understand what is the purpose of your diversity inclusion policy? What is your organization's value? What is your end goal? What are you trying to achieve? What is the purpose of this diversity inclusion policy that you're trying to get? It could be creating a safe space where everyone feels empowered to, share their points of view. How do you then embed that within your diversity inclusion policy? So it's understanding the purpose and your end goal would allow you to then actually understand, okay, this is where I need to start with my diversity and inclusion policy. Second thing is to create built-in time and space for employee contributions. Your organization will not grow, and especially that inclusion element, you'll be unable to get that if you don't have a space where employee can contribute about how they feel, what they think. So you need to create a space and a time for employee contributions. So this can be in stand-ups, it could be in anonymous surveys. Think about, how do you engage employees? How do you create that employee engagement and create a space where they actually feel comfortable to share their points of view as well? And the third thing is to have a long-term business diversity vision. Diversity is not a short-term goal, it's a long-term goal, because ultimately you want your business to be diverse. You want to be able to cater for the global economy. So think about, what is your long-term diversity vision? And that would allow you to know where to start. And tips for implementation is to, number one, look beyond numbers and the standards quotas for image preservation. Like I said, diversity is more than gender and ethnicity. There's other elements. So think about that as well. But also make sure you get feedback about your company's diversity inclusion culture at every part of an employee's journey. So from the recruitment experience to daily supervision, you need to get that feedback, because that feedback will allow you to be able to, like we talked about, measuring, allow you to measure, allow you to reflect, and then to reinforce your goals as well. So that's kind of all I have to say today. I want to leave you all with a last quote, and that is, inclusivity means not just that we're allowed to be there, but that we are valued. Claudia says that smart teams will do amazing things, but truly diverse teams will do impossible things. And I want to leave you with that quote today. But I'm also happy to take on questions that anyone may have as well. If you want to get in touch with me, my website, as well as my LinkedIn and email, are on the slides.
That's great. Thank you so much for that, Stephanie. And it's such an interesting subject. So just to the attendees, thank you so much for listening to this today. This is your opportunity to ask Stephanie any questions. She's here, we've got her. So please feel free to pop those into the question pane and we can get them asked for you. So no problem at all. So one of the things, obviously, just thinking about as you were going through that, the size of the companies, does that sometimes have an impact on what they implement with regards to diversity?
I think actually smaller companies, I think, are in a better position to implement diversity inclusion policies because they have that smaller connection, that smaller pool. They're able to get firsthand employee contribution. I think it's understanding, okay, what is your culture? And if you're a small team, this is the best time to think about that because you want to think long term. You don't want to lose your values as you expand, which sometimes we tend to see. So it's thinking about what type of culture do you want to have? And, I talked about diversity, but I think what's even more important is inclusion because diversity will get that person through the door, but inclusion is what will allow them to stay and will allow you to have that retention. So it's thinking about, even if you're a small organization, what are the small steps that you can do? It could be having employee hangouts, having an open space where employees can share, their experiences. And like I said, think about the implementation at every stage of your employees' journey as well.
Great, thank you very much. So are there any resources that you can recommend for small businesses who want to foster inclusion and diversity, but may not know where to start and begin?
Yeah, I would say the best thing is to engage with community groups. And this is not even me trying to sell my group, the other groups there. I think I mentioned Santos and Coding Black Females. There's even leading ladies of cyber as well. Engage with different community groups because then you'll be able to kind of like have an inkling or you have access to diverse candidates, but you'd also be able to understand experiences as well. Another thing I would recommend is going to seminars, going to different events, diverse events, to kind of see people's conversations around this. But also, I think, again, I'm going back, engage with community groups because they would be your first line of contact to diverse talent. They understand maybe barriers that you may not have considered, and they can help you as well when you're thinking about ways in which you are doing your job adverts to interview processes as well. I hope that was helpful to Gemma.
Lovely, thank you very much. So with regards to your questions, if there's anything that you need to follow on or you want Stephanie to reiterate, or please feel free to follow up on that. So we've had another question come in. Can you give an example of how a company might create time, space for contributions to support diversity and inclusion?
So I would say one great initiative that I know some companies implement is by having networks. So creating employee networks. It could be disability network, it could be BAME network, it could be any network. So giving your employees a chance for them to create their own network is a great way to kind of have space for contributions. Also, having anonymized surveys is another great way to get your employees' point of view. But when I talk about anonymous surveys, it has to be anonymous because you want people to feel empowered to voice their opinions and thoughts as well. Another way could even be having a space of time where they can just come and share their, thoughts, maybe say that every Thursday, or maybe once a month, actually. Once a month and for an hour, there's a space for people to come and share their thoughts and suggestions of how the company can improve their diversity and inclusion. And then people can come. It's almost like a town hall meeting. So these are potential examples that you can use to kind of create time and space for contributions, but also empowering those employee networks as well would give your employee the chance of almost taking ownership of ways they can also help you with your diversity and inclusion initiatives within your company as well.
Excellent, thank you. And do you find sometimes within organisations that it just needs that one person to start, so that other people can kind of think, oh yeah, that's a really good idea, and I was thinking the same thing. Do you think that sort of helps with it?
Yes, you do need someone to start. You need someone to be on board, and it has also come from a senior team as well. It can come from the bottom, which is why I also talk about employee networks. But you do need that buy-in from senior staff because you need to think about, diverse inclusion is not an add-on thing. It's something that you need to think of from the very beginning. And like I said, in every element of your recruitment process to your onboarding process to even day-to-day employee engagement with managers as well. So it's it's having that one person to push the needle, but also getting a buy-in from the rest of the business as well, because it's not a one-man thing. And you know, you need a whole organization to invest in this idea for it to actually blossom.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So I don't think we have any other questions for you today, but you know, please feel free if you do. Stephani's put on there her email address, so please feel free to email her, or you can get in touch with us at marketing at crest-approved.org. So that was a great way to start the day. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for coming on and doing that presentation. Really informative, and yes, as I say, very exciting to start this day off and for you to be a part of it. Now, we do have webinars and we do have panel sessions and workshops running throughout today and tomorrow, and I can just let you know that you will see Stephanie again on one of those, so keep a lookout and she'll be back later, definitely. Okay, would you like to say a last few words, Stephanie, before we end the webinar?
I want to say thank you, Debbie, and also thank you for everyone coming here today. I mean, you coming to this talk as well is the first step on your journey as well. So best of luck to everyone on their diversity inclusion journey.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. And yes, thank you to everyone for attending today. So take care, and we look forward to seeing you on some more of the sessions throughout the day. Take care. Bye.